So the first thing I'm going to do to create a walking network data set is go to my exercise 7 data folder, expand that until I see the driving and walking subfolders. And I'm going to expand walking and I'll see network GDB and a walking, which is a feature data set, and that contains feature classes. The ones I'll be using are roads, so I'll bring that in, and paths. I'll bring that in. And I'll just change the color of path so it's easier to see with respect to the road. So there's our paths and roads. And if I just zoom into some arbitrary area along the green belt here, for example, we can see how the path network connects to the road network. So those are roads. And then we have paths, and they connect together at junctions. And wherever there's a junction between a road and a path, even though they might look a little funny here, at these locations, travel can change from road to path or path to road, but that has to be set up properly within a network data set. And that's called a multimodal network data set because we have two modes of transportation or two transportation networks here. One, which is roads where only cars and bicycles and stuff can go on. And so can people, they can walk on them. And then we have paths, which are restricted use transportation network that is good for just things such as biking, walking, jogging, etc. But you can't take a car on there, for example, or any other motorized vehicle. So let's look at paths first. So I'll open the attribute table. And for walking, what we care about are things like this, walk time. And how do we calculate walk time? Well, it depends on the length of each segment. So for example, if I was to just select a segment here, like this one, and I look at that segment here, although I got a couple, that's all right, but one of the segments has about 0.28 minutes of walk time based on a length of 23 meters. Or maybe that's in hours. I'm not sure because I don't have any information to go along with that walk time variable. So I'll just clear everything and look back at my table here. Go back to everything. So walk time I need to specify. Do I want it to be in minutes, hours, seconds, or etc.? So let's have a look at that. Here's an equation to get the number of minutes. So time in minutes is equal to 60 times the distance in kilometers per hour that somebody can walk. I should say distance in kilometers divided by the speed, which is average walking speed of 5 kilometers per hour. And those all work out to give us time in minutes. So we'll compute that based on distance divided by speed times 60. So back here, I'll go on walk time and I'll just recalculate that so that I know what it is, that it's in minutes, because I don't know anything right now if I was to use it. It was just there. So I'll go to calculate field. And if walk time isn't there, add a field and then calculate the field. So here, we're going to use, it's going to be 60 times, and then in parentheses, the distance, which is by default in meters, shape length. And we want that in kilometers, so we have to divide that by 1,000. So that's for the equation, the way we want it to work out in minutes. So 60 times that divided by the speed, which is 5 kilometers per hour. And that gives us walk time in minutes. So that's what we're just using is this equation right here. 60 over distance in kilometers. That's why we divide meters by 1,000 divided by speed, which is 5 kilometers per hour. So I'll click OK. And that'll compute. And there were no changes. So now I know that walk time was calculated in minutes. Then for roads, I need to do the same thing for people that are going to be walking on roads, because I care about how long it takes to walk somewhere. And I'll look in here and there is no walk time variable at all. So I need to add one. So I'll click on the Add Field button. It'll bring me to the fields view. And at the bottom, the new field will be called, oh, there is one in there called walk time already. So let's check that out. I didn't see it. Oh, there it is, walk time. So I'm going to recompute that as well, rather than remaking a new field. So I'll go to calculate field, again in roads here, and I'll do the same thing, 60 times, in parentheses, divided by 5, and in the parentheses will be the shape length divided by 1,000 to go from meters to kilometers, like so. And I'll click apply, same thing. Just to make sure the walk times in the units of minutes, I need to recalculate it myself. And I also have to ensure that, of course, here that the meters are good. In other words, the map projection being used when this is being calculated is the projection of the individual layers themselves. So I can always double click on one and see what the coordinate system is. So if I go to source and then spatial reference, it'll tell me. That's a City of Ottawa transverse Mercator. And it has the scale factor of 9.9999. That's a modified transverse Mercator. So this is good for measuring distances in the city. So it's not a type of projection that would be bad for measuring distances, such as a regular type of Mercator projection or something otherwise. There's a special type like UTM with smaller zones where the maximum distortion away from true on the elliptical model of the Earth is 0.9999. So that's pretty good at the just on each side of the central meridian. So it's as off as you're going to get. So it's a good coordinate system for computing distances. So now that I have the walk times, I'll just close those and I'll go over to my walking feature data set. I'll right click and I'll say new network data set. And if you don't have network data set here, then that means you don't have the permissions. So you go to the project tab, licensing, and look under here for Esri extensions, the one called Network Analyst, and make sure it says yes. If it says no, change it to yes. And you may have to configure or manage licensing options to do so. That being said, if I have it, then I say new network data set, and it'll bring up the network data set dialog. I'm going to call it walking. That's the target feature data set. And I'm going to call the network data set walking _ND for network data set. Then I choose which feature classes here will participate in this network data set. And that's going to be roads and paths. So paths and roads, like so. So it's a multimodal because there's more than one feature class participating in the network data set. And then I just have to click run. There we go. Now I go to catalog and I will see walking ND in my walking feature data set. Now for the part where we tell the network data set or what its properties are. So I right click on properties for the network data set. That'll open up the properties dialog. By default, network data set, it'll give us the default things. It'll say it's not built. That's the very last step once we set all the properties. And we want a surface area index as well. So we click on that little box here, the spatial reference, City of Ottawa, transverse Mercator. That all looks good. So I click on source. In source, it says network dataset is used by network layers open in maps. So I have here in this particular map, my network dataset was automatically added when I created it. So I have to remove it from here before I can set any properties. So I'll just click OK. Then I'll go over to my contents pane and I'll remove the network dataset. Then I'll go back to walking and the properties. Like so. Now you don't have that yellow warning. Here, we're not going to be modeling on elevation except on roads, if there's any roads. So we'll check here and we'll see if there's anything for elevation. No. So elevation, again, tells us whether there's an under or overpass. And for our purposes here, we can't model that. So some walking will be not perfectly correct unless we can have that elevation field that would say that, for example, here, just where I'm circling my mouse, you can see there's a clover leaf. And obviously here you can't just go from on top of the bridge onto the 417 or 174, I should say, right here. And elevation is what models that. Without elevation, if there's roads crossing here, it will allow someone who's walking to make that turn and they would fall off the bridge if they weren't paying attention. So there's nothing to do with elevation here. You'll see how it's used with the driving data set. But group connectivity is very important. So paths and roads, any vertex. And we're just going to have one group. We could have two groups like so. Paths and roads. But just one group is fine. Any vertex. And that means wherever there's a vertex that whereby a path and a road intersect, we can have an agent or person traveling on that network walking between them, between the two modes. So once that's done, I'll go down to travel attributes. And I need to add one here. So by default, there's nothing in travel modes. So I'll add one, new, and it's going to be walking. So under type here, I choose walking, like so. And that's going to be my travel mode. The impedance by default is length, and there's no time cost yet because we haven't set any costs. So we do that first. We set our travel mode as walking, then I click on costs. Now I'm going to add my walk time. So I'll say new, and where it says new cost, I can change it down here to walk time. Minutes, double. Then I have to set, okay, well, where's that information coming from? For paths, it'll come from a field. So I'll say field script for that. And then I'll double click here, and then I'll see this little field script settings button. I'll click on that. I'll choose Python. And then in result, I'll put the name of the field in exclamation point, walk time. So, and I'll click OK. That'll fill it in for paths, and then I do the same for roads. So I'll say field script for roads. Click over here, change it to Python, exclamation mark, walk time. Because that's the name of the field that we saw and we validated in our tables. So walk time. And we won't have restrictions. So these are things like one-way streets because people can walk either direction on those. And hierarchy, I think we have a hierarchy attribute for roads, but that's for driving. It's not for walking, so we don't need to add that. We don't need any descriptors. They're non-functional. So, and restrictions, we don't have any. So we just have cost, walk time, and it's coming from the field walk time. So I'll click OK. Like so. Property, the network dataset properties were not updated. What's the issue? Next, after clicking OK, I'll right-click and say Build. So I go to my walking network data set and I say Build. So you right-click and say Build, and then Run. And that process can take a minute, 2 minutes, even 10 minutes sometimes. The more complex the network and more modes there are, the longer it takes. And it says it has some build errors here. So if I want to see what they are, I can copy that right there, and then go back to any browser here where I have my Windows Explorer, and I can paste those in there and see what those are about. Okay, these are all because there's some little tiny edge features, there's not a lot of them, that are too small to participate in the network. So that's nothing to worry about usually. Well, it is something to worry about. You would want to check on what each of those are, see what the issue is, but they're not going to affect what we're doing here in this example. So that's been built now. So what I want to do next is test it. So I'm going to click on Analysis in the top over here, the Analysis tab, and then Network Analysis, and I'm just going to choose Route, just to have that in there. Next, I'll click on the Walking ND right below. So Walking ND, so that's our network data set. Turn it on and off here. And I can turn off paths and roads because they're all part of the network data set. They don't have any different colors. It's just all gray now. So I just want to test connectivity between roads and paths. So what I'm going to do is when I select the Walking ND, I'll see up here Network Analyst and Explore Network Tool. If you don't have this, it's okay. This is just to illustrate that we have something that's working. So I'll click on this little one right here. Right there. And I'll see that that is in fact connected. I'll just zoom in so it's easier to see. That connects to the road. And the road then connects to these two segments of the path. Likewise, if I click on this little segment of path here, it shows that it connects to the roads and whatnot. We can also test that by adding some stops. So if I click on route here, I can create features. That'll open the create features pane. And I want to put a stop. So I click stops, and I'll just add one over here. And I'll add one over here. As such, there's two stops for this route problem or issue. Then I'm just going to click run up here. And it shows me that I have a solution from a road to a pathway. And that's just to check and to validate that your multimodal network is actually working as it should. If it doesn't connect, if it can't get from that point to that point, then you know you have some issues with connectivity, and you have to go in and maybe do some manual editing of many of your locations. But that's a walking network, and that's how you create it. And you can then use it for various things, as you'll see in the other parts of this module.